I'll never forget the day I saw someone pour a can of paint over my daughter's head in the middle of a sweltering afternoon. It was barely a month after we'd settled in a Meadow VYEW Heights, a pristine suburban neighborhood that looked like it belonged on a postcard. My 10-year-old daughter, Emma, was the VY Tim, and the image of thick blue paint dripping down her jacket, streaking her hair, and pooling around her bright purple walker is seared into my mind. A crowd of neighbors stood frozen on the sidewalk, jaws dropped, as the culprit, our HOA president, Margaret Voss, clutched the empty paint can with a smug look as if she'd just swatted a fly. Emma has cerebral palsy. She gets around with leg braces and a walker. She's decorated with glittery unicorn stickers and tiny hearts, her favorite things. That humid day in Meadow VYEW Heights, I was still adjusting to my new role at the Department of Justice, working in the CI VYL Rights DVY Shown. I kept my job quiet, not wanting people to treat me differently when they learned I investigate discrimination cases. Little did I know I'd soon be using my expertise right in my own backyard. Meadow VYEW Heights seemed like paradise at first. Perfectly trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, and a fancy stone archway at the entrance that read, "Welcome to Meadow VYEW Heights, where neighbors are family." For a single mom raising a kid with special needs, it felt like a dream. Emma was thrilled about the playground near the community center, which looked accessible enough for her walker. I'd spent years in cramped apartments, so buying our little townhome felt like a giant leap toward a stable future. But the moment we rolled out of the MOVYing van, I sensed eyes on us. Neighbors waved politely, but some peeked from behind curtains, their stares sharp and wary. It didn't take long to figure out why. Margaret Voss, the HOA president for over a decade, ruled the place like a queen. She was tall, always in crisp blouses, with a clipboard permanently glued to her hand. Our first week, a neighbor named Sarah brought over a pie and whispered, "Watch out for Margaret. She's obsessed with keeping everything perfect. Don't leave so much as a bike on your porch." I brushed it off, thinking it was just small-town gossip. Then I met Margaret myself. Emma and I were strolling the neighborhood, her walker clicking softly on the sidewalk, when we spotted Margaret outside the clubhouse, eyeing us like we'd trespassed. I introduced myself, mentioned we'd just moved into 214 Oak Lane, and asked for tips for new folks. Her smile was thin, her eyes locked on Emma's walker. "Our bylaws are strict about maintaining the neighborhood's look, Miss Carter," she said, flipping through her clipboard. "I trust you'll keep that in mind, especially with equipment." She glanced at Emma's walker again, her meaning crystal clear. I forced a smile, explaining it was medically necessary, but Margaret just said, "I see," and walked off. That was the first red flag, but my DOJ job kept me too busy to dwell on it. I figured we'd keep our heads down and avoid trouble. Then the notes started. Slipped under our door, there were petty warnings about trash cans left out too long or unapproved porch decor. One even mentioned Emma's walker. Medical to VYCS must not obstruct walkways. Emma's walker was rarely outside for more than a minute, but Margaret was watching. She never delivered the notes herself, just sent them like a coward. I tried calling her, left voicemails asking to talk, but she only responded with more official HOA notices. Things got worse. One day, Emma and I were back from a doctor's appointment, and she needed a rest on our front steps. Margaret appeared out of nowhere, skiing at the walker. "That can't stay there," she snapped. "Personal items belong inside." I explained Emma was using it, just catching her breath. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Looks like she's sitting. That's not use." Emma, confused, asked me later, "Mom, did I do something bad?" My stomach twisted. She was 10, and already she felt Margaret's disdain. I decided to address it at the monthly HOA meeting. I thought explaining Emma's rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act would settle things. I was wrong. Margaret spent the meeting bragging about the neighborhood's flawless gardens and uniform paint colors, then slipped in a jab about unsightly medical equipment. She stared right at me. I stood up, calmly noting that Emma's walker was legally protected and Margaret's notes felt like harassment. She brushed it off, claiming she was just VYing the community VYB. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. A guy named Tom whispered later that he disagreed with Margaret, but he didn't say it out loud. I left fuming, knowing this wasn't condemned. 2 weeks later, Margaret upped the ante. Emma was dropped off by the school bus while I was at work. My sister, Lisa, who watches Emma until I'm home, stepped inside for a quick call. Leah VYing Emma in our yard picking daisies. Margaret drove by, rolled down her window, and yelled at Emma for ruining the common area's flowers. She even threatened a fine. Emma, scared, hurried inside. When I heard, I confronted Margaret the next morning, reminding her Emma was a kid who meant no harm. Margaret just smirked, saying Emma needed to respect the rules, and later sent a notice accusing us of destroying HOA property. Emma cried when she saw it. Lisa started keeping her inside after that. Then came the paint incident. It was a blazing hot day, and Emma was in our driveway, painting a wooden birdhouse she'd made at school. She wore an apron to keep her clothes clean, brushing pastel purple onto the wood with a big smile. I was inside on a work call, and Lisa had run to the store. Emma said Margaret stormed up, glaring at the paint jar. When Emma said, "Hi," Margaret snapped about public messes and told her to stop, claiming the paint fumes would bother neighbors. Emma explained it was non-toxic, water-based paint, but Margaret didn't care. She grabbed Emma's paintbrush, yanked it from her hand, and tossed it aside. Paint splattered the driveway. Then, unbelievably, Margaret snatched the half-full paint cup from Emma's walker tray and dumped it over her head. Emma yelped as sticky purple paint dripped down her hair and stained her favorite green shirt. I rushed out at her cry, my heart stopping when I saw Margaret holding the empty cup, Emma trembling, tears mixing with paint. "What are you doing?" I screamed, grabbing a towel to wipe Emma's face. Margaret dropped the cup and glared. "I warned her about making a mess," she said, as if that excused pouring paint on a child. "She's 10, I shouted, my voice shaking. "You assaulted my daughter." Margaret crossed her arms. "Call it what you want. If she treats this place like her art studio, she needs to learn." Emma sobbed, paint dripping onto her walker. Neighbors gathered, horrified. A woman named Julia ran over with napkins to help. Someone yelled, "Margaret, are you insane?" But Margaret insisted she was protecting property and started walking away. I blocked her path. "Don't you dare leave," I said. "This is assault, and I'm not letting it go." She sneered, calling Emma a brat who was vandalizing the neighborhood. I was so angry I nearly blurted out my DOJ job right then, but I held back, saying only, "You'll regret this, Margaret." She laughed. "Is that a threat, Ms. Carter?" "It's a promise," I shot back. She shoved past me, got her SUV, and drove off. Julia whispered, "I got the end on VY Deo." Her phone showed Margaret tipping the cup and Emma crying. I thank her, my stomach churning, but grateful for proof. We got Emma cleaned up, but she was shaken. That night, I decided enough was enough. I wasn't just Emma's mommy, was a DOJ investigator, and Margaret's actions screamed discrimination against Emma's disability. Her walker, her presence, didn't fit Margaret's perfect VY shown, and she'd targeted her for it. I filed a police report for assault, gathered Julia's VY Deo, Margaret's notes, and Emma's statement, and called a DOJ colleague for ad VYC on ADA violations. Word spread fast. Neighbors like Jack admitted Margaret was a bully, not the strict but fair leader he'd thought. Another, Claire, said Margaret once threatened to fine her for her son's wheelchair by the mailbox. "She hates anything that looks different," Claire said. Margaret tried to spin it, sending memos claiming Emma was spreading paint on community property. But Julia's VY Dio, a kid painting a birdhouse on her own driveway, then drenched by a furious adult, told the truth. The police tried to get Margaret's statement, but she dodged them, claiming HOA duties. Tension in Meadow VY EW Heights skyrocketed. Everyone whispered about lawsuits and Margaret's potential ousting, but her loyal board allies made internal change unlikely. I had to push harder. I filed an ADA complaint, citing Margaret's harassment of Emma's walker use and the assault as disability-based discrimination. I also prepped a lawsuit for emotional distress, backed by doctors' notes showing Emma's nightmares and anxiety about going outside. Margaret strutted around, telling people I was overreacting, but I stayed focused, building my case. At an emergency HOA meeting, Margaret tried to paint herself as a VY Tim, claiming Emma's paint was a public hazard. I stood up, heart pounding. "You poured paint on my daughter," I said. "We have VY Deo. We have witnesses." She tried to silence me, but a board member, Greg, cut in. "We want to hear Ms. Carter now." I played Julia's VY Deo on the projector. Gasps filled the room as Margaret tipped the paint over Emma. When it ended, the room went silent. Margaret blinked, stunned. "You never said that before," she sputtered. "I shouldn't have to," I replied. Greg moved to suspend her as president, and the motion passed. Margaret's power crumbled. She posted rants online, but the VY Deo drowned her out. My DOJ friend confirmed our case was airtight. The police finally got Margaret's statement, where she claimed Emma endangered property, a weak excuse. Emma, meanwhile, struggled. "Why does she hate my walker?" she asked one night. I got her a therapist, and we practiced affirmations, reminding her she was enough. Margaret tried to negotiate a quiet exit, but I demanded a public apology, therapy costs, and an accessibility fund. Other families came forward, sharing how Margaret fined them for mobility aids or colorful ramps. At the next HOA meeting, the board voted to expel her. Margaret stormed out, yelling about a kangaroo court, but her reign was over. We settled the lawsuit. She paid for Emma's therapy, funded accessibility upgrades, and read an apology at an HOA meeting, admitting her unjust actions. Emma held my hand, tears of relief in her eyes. Meadow VYEW Heights changed. A new president, Mrs. Ellis, worked with Julia and me to re-VYSE bylaws, adding disability protections and training. Emma joined a kids' art club, painting again with supportive neighbors. We launched a color fest where families painted murals with washable paints as symbol of unity. Emma led part of it, painting unicorns in bright purples. A local reporter covered our story, a DOJ mom and her daughter turning trauma into triumph. Emma told the camera, "It hurt, but we made it better for everyone." Margaret still lives here, but her yard's overgrown now, a quiet rebellion against the changes she couldn't stop. Emma asked once, "Is she sorry?" I said, "Maybe she just regrets getting caught." Emma nodded, wise beyond her years. "Maybe she'll learn." I'm proud of her resilience and how we exposed Margaret's cruelty. My DOJ role helped, but the neighbors Julia, Greg, and others made the real difference. Emma paints birdhouses again, joking about a driveway art party. I tell her, "Paint all you want. That's your right." Meadow VYEW Heights isn't perfect, but it's home now, a place where Emma's walker, her art, and her spirit shine, backed by community that finally learned to stand up.